Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. Apologies for the late start, the occasional internet gremlins. I must tell you that I, of course, was reading the comments that you folks exchange to each other while you're waiting. Very human, often humorous, and very loyal watchers, and we appreciate your hanging on with us. Phil Giraldi is here. Phil, welcome here, my dear friend. I do want to talk to you at some length about this horrific series of events in Israel, which we'll refer to as Netanyahu and prison rape. But before we get there, yesterday, the President of the United States announced that the American government would build a $500 million military base at the border of Gaza and Israel. This, of course, will bring about the once unthinkable American boots on the ground in Gaza. Where does this lead us to?
Well, it's interesting. I've been following that story, same as you, and some of it is rather ambiguous. I gather that when the White House was queried about this, it was explained that this was going to be the military base for the Joint Security Force that was going to be taking over in Gaza at some point and serve as a tool to train the police and create a security environment. And in other words, there was a lot of BS coming out of the White House. I didn't get the impression that this would be overwhelmingly U.S. boots on the ground, or even that it would be significantly U.S. boots on the ground. I gather from what they were saying that they're still negotiating who is going to make up this force. So the whole thing is kind of weird. What was it, $500 million? I mean, that's peanuts compared to what Donald Trump wastes on going to play golf. So, the thing is that this is just kind of a screwy story. There are other stories floating around about how the Israelis, who apparently now within what they're calling their yellow line security zone of Gaza, are up to 58% there, and there is an assumption that this U.S. base, or this base, whatever it turns out to be, is going to be amalgamated with what the Israelis are up to. So there are a whole lot of funny stories floating. You may have heard something more interesting or better than.
We also learned when the head and hand chopper was in the Oval Office the other day, Al-Jilani, the president, or calls himself the president of Syria, that the U.S. government is going to build a $500 million base right outside of Damascus. Now, what the hell do we need that for?
Yeah, well, of course, the simple solution is that both these bases are being built at the Israeli request, and no doubt will be exploited by the U.S. or by Israel, for the U.S. to be kind of the patsy setting up new mechanisms that will enable Israeli expansion. I'm sure you're aware that Israel is continuing to bomb Lebanon, and there's talk about more expansion into Lebanon, and they are very close now to Damascus, and to build a base there right near or in Damascus would be probably something that they would be easily able to weaponize with U.S. accommodation. So that you have that. So you have all these things coming together. And if one makes the assumption that essentially these are things that Israel is pushing for, which I think is a safe assumption, then it's kind of up to us to figure out what is the backstory, what is the game behind all of this.
I wish I knew, other than, I'm looking at your most recent piece at the UN's review. Torture and rape are all in a day's work for Israel's defenders. We'll get to the torture and rape in a minute. But there really doesn't seem to be any dispute whatsoever over the answer to this question. Does Trump control Netanyahu, or does Netanyahu control Trump?
Well, I think there's no question about it. It's the only reason that anyone would object to that formulation is that they would prefer a different formulation, which basically emphasizes the fact that it may not be as much Netanyahu per se as the Israel lobby, uh, widely defined in the United States, and the Jewish billionaires who basically have bought the U.S. government and just about everything else in sight to make sure that Israel gets a sweet ride.
So one could say, does the American lobby, as John Mearsheimer would call them, the donors, do they facilitate Netanyahu to control Trump? The short answer to that is yes. In fact, the long answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I think so. And we have that weird occurrence that took place in Israel when Donald Trump more or less admitted that the Adelsons owned him and owned the U.S. government to a large extent on behalf of Israel. When he asked that question, "Who are you really loyal to?" And oh, I don't really expect an answer. Well, we know
Yes,
that.
yes. He implicated that Mrs. Adelson was more loyal to Israel. He also embarrassed her by saying she has $60 billion in the bank. I don't know if that's true. And if it is true, would you really put that kind of money in a bank? But without getting too granular here, he was, talking off script and just being himself. Before we get into specifics, you might enjoy seeing this, Phil. A Knesset member telling Prime Minister Netanyahu to his face what she thought of him. Chris, cut number 7.
I blame you, Benjamin Netanyahu. I blame you for the mindset in October. The greatest disaster this country has ever known happened on your watch. Even if you sleep with a clear conscience, we will not forget. We will cry out over the abandonment, and a state commission of inquiry will be established. I blame you, Netanyahu. Your personal corruption has become a national plague. Every corrupt person becomes your partner. The bigger the file you have on someone, the more convenient they are for you. I blame you, Netanyahu, because you have forgotten what it means to be Jewish. Trump returned hostages in your place, while you shamelessly were busy trying to get him to grant a pardon. I blame you, Netanyahu. Racism has always served you. It has torn us apart from within. You turned half the nation into an enemy. We will cleanse the poison you have poured here for 30 years. We will return to being a united society. I blame you, Netanyahu. I blame you, Netanyahu, yes.
Well, she's got that right.
She is right on just about every point, and he sat there with his usual smirk.
Yeah, well, essentially, a lot of this dissent is, there are some good Israelis, and she's one of them, and I can't think of too many others. But the fact is that she is basically, my understanding is that she kind of made this speech in the context of October 7th, obviously, and there's no question at this time that was contrived. That was something that was allowed to happen by the Israeli.
You're talking about the Hamas invasion on October 7th.
Yeah, the Hamas incident on October 7th. I'm talking about how the Israelis had plenty of forewarning from a number of sources that something was coming, but they let it happen. They had military resources close to the event, and they didn't unleash them until long after. And when they did so, they killed like 400 Israelis. So together with plenty of Palestinians. So this was a contrived event, and I think that's what the context of where she started on this. There's a lot of suspicion in Israel now, particularly if you read some of the left-wing media in Israel about how this whole thing came about, and that's a good sign.
Earlier today, the President of the United States caused a letter to be sent to President Herzog of Israel, in which President Trump requests that President Herzog pardon Prime Minister Netanyahu. As you know, he's under indictment, and actually the trials are going on. They don't run trials over there the way they do here. They do it piecemeal, a few days here, a few days there. It's three separate prosecutions. Here's Yair Lapid, the opposition leader on the floor of the Knesset, responding to President Trump's letter. Chris, cut number 14.
But there comes a moment when people who call themselves the national camp also need to say to the American president, listen, we are a sovereign country. There is a limit to interference. It is precisely the nationalists who should say, listen, you can't send letters and demand a pardon for the Israeli prime minister in a criminal proceeding. We are a proud country. We are a sovereign nation. We are not a protectorate of anyone. It can't be that the prime minister keeps running to you for help and you issue letters calling to grant him a pardon. A country that is proud of itself, with national dignity, with a large national camp that crosses both coalition and opposition, does not behave this way. And there are plenty of people here who spend all day telling us what kind of national pride we should have. First and foremost, the Prime Minister, and secondly, the Justice Ministers should have approached the American President and told him, sir, we ask you, stop interfering in this matter because we have our pride. We are not an American protectorate, we are an independent country, and it pains me that the national camp is not behaving like a national camp. Thank you very much.
They are an American protectorate. They wouldn't even exist without American arms and cash.
Or you might put it the other way, that the United States is the surrogate in the relationship, and Trump is obviously doing the deed for Netanyahu, who's asking him to do it. And I noticed the letter, I read it before, how disgusting it is. It's typical Trump. It praises the hell out of Trump while it's also praising the hell out of Netanyahu. Two criminals that perhaps should be sharing a cell somewhere in The Hague.
The president of Israel answered in a rather matter-of-factly sort of diplomatic way. Anybody that's interested in a pardon should apply for one. Apparently Netanyahu was not even applied for it. He's just using his leverage with Trump to pursue it. How does the United States react when the IDF kills Americans in Israel?
Well, the United States doesn't react. That's one of the more interesting aspects. As you know from my background, I served a lot of time in embassies, U.S. embassies overseas. And one of the big jobs for a U.S. embassy overseas is to protect American citizens in the foreign environments. And one of the things that I always saw being done was if an American were killed in a criminal incident or even a traffic accident or something like that, the embassy would have someone going over there immediately and saying, yeah, keep us informed on what you're doing in this. We'd like to be engaged on this. If you have any questions or issues, we'd like to know, what happened, how it happened, and what the consequences will be, so on and so forth. They're very good about that. The time when they don't do it is in Israel. We have Rachel Corrie going back a ways, who was run over deliberately by an Israeli army bulldozer and killed. U.S. Embassy did nothing about it. The U.S. Embassy more recently, Shireen Abu Akleh, you might remember, the journalist who was wearing an orange vest, marked journalist, who was targeted and killed by an Israeli sniper. This was back last year. And the United States Embassy, she's a Palestinian American, U.S. citizen. U.S. Embassy did absolutely nothing about going and making sure that the Israelis did something to see what the consequences would be for this soldier killing somebody who was clearly identified and who turned out to be an American citizen. They did nothing about it. And then there's the old 1967 USS Liberty, 34 American seamen killed, 171 injured. The U.S. Embassy did nothing to remonstrate with the Israeli government about what had happened. And there was a big cover up by the White House with LBJ and Robert McNamara, Secretary of Defense, to make sure that Israel was exonerated. It was a case of mistaken identity. So this is a long pattern of Israel is never to blame for anything, and this persists.
What did LBJ say, or what does history record he said to Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense, about what he would prefer?
Well, apparently the USS Saratoga was not too far from where the incident took place, and they launched aircraft right away to help the Liberty. Johnson heard of this, and he went into a rage, and he turned to McNamara and said, I want those planes called back, which McNamara did. And Johnson apparently commented, he said, I would rather see all those American sea boys go to the bottom of the sea rather than offend our good friends Israel.
Mm. What kind of standing does the United States have internationally because of its obsequience to the Israeli prime minister and his regime?
Well, I would actually expand that a bit. I think that the general view of most of the world right now, in terms of the relationship, the subordinate relationship of the United States with Israel, which is constantly being demonstrated, is that nothing but contempt for the United States and what it represents. And this contempt is particularly focused on Joe Biden when he was president, and now with Donald Trump. Donald Trump may even be worse in terms of his total slavery to whatever is being thrown at him by a sneering Benjamin Netanyahu.
Has Trump, as far as you know, commented on the now notorious rape case where these IDF thugs filmed themselves brutalizing and raping a Palestinian prisoner? The Palestinian prisoner needed more than 20 surgeries to repair the damage they did to his body. The person who revealed the existence of the tape was a major general and the chief lawyer for the IDF. She has since been forced to resign and is now being prosecuted herself. And Benjamin Netanyahu calls this a PR case, a case of bad public relations.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's been no comment from the U.S. government at any level, State Department or anything else, about this egregious crime. The Israelis have been famous for at least the 30 years that I've been following what's been going on in the Middle East, for torturing people, for killing people, and there's never been any hint at any consequences coming from the United States in particular, and from some of the other lackeys who are in Europe. So this is a typical pattern where the Israelis can believe that they can get away with anything, and indeed they can get away with anything because of the cover-ups that are engineered even in the United Nations by the U.S. and others. And this is what they do. Anybody else doing this would be up before the International Criminal Court and tried for war crimes, and they would be going to prison. I would love to see a lot of people that are not involved in this or involved in this being given the same punishment, even people within our government that I'll leave nameless.
Here are these thugs walking into prison, and you'll see the crowds reacting. The crowds are actually applauding them. Now they're wearing masks, hugging each other. These are rapists, admitted self-photographed rapists being cheered by the crowd, embracing each other, wearing masks in an anteroom outside the courtroom.
Yeah,
What
this
kind
was
of a society reacts this way, Phil?
Yeah, this was a couple of days ago. Apparently, there was another incident, same sort of thing. They were in a public forum and they were being cheered by the audience about how wonderful they were for what they did. And these people are monsters. And the fact that they are so popular in Israel and popular among the political class in particular kind of tells you how awful the sentiment in Israel has grown towards exterminating the Palestinians. And if other people like Americans or Europeans get in the way, well, they can be exterminated too.
Has Netanyahu condemned the rape? Has Donald Trump condemned the rape? Or are they both nihilists who stand for nothing, that have no moral principles whatsoever?
Well, neither one of them has addressed the issue of the rape. They've Netanyahu has addressed the issue of the public relations damage this has done to Israel, and of course he's implied that this is based on anti-Semitism and is probably a lie. Donald Trump, of course, has said nothing. He would have to wrap his head around it. And that's something that's probably beyond him.
Well, where's this all going to go? I guess it's just going to get worse and worse, particularly if we send American troops there, Phil.
Well, I would think it will only get worse because this whole so-called ceasefire and the Trump peace plan, if I might throw a little joke into the proceedings here, are heading in the wrong direction. Absolutely, there has been. The Israelis have continued to kill Palestinians every day since the alleged ceasefire went on, and they have basically been continuing to do what they always do in the region. So we can expect more. We can expect a lot more on the West Bank, where there are some really horrific things going on also in terms of beating and torturing and killing Palestinian farmers, taking away their livelihoods, and driving them out as best they can, which is pretty effective. They want no Palestinians left in Palestine. So this is what they're all about. And Donald Trump is right on board. And so is our Secretary of State and our Secretary of War. And the next step is certainly going to be an attack on Iran.
Thank you, Phil. It's a very sad story, rapidly deteriorating from the perspective of any moral point of view. But thank you for the research and the courage that you bring to this. All the best, my dear friend. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much. Good to be on with you.
Thank you. Coming up at 1:15 this afternoon from the Ron Paul Institute, Daniel McAdams. At 2 o'clock, Aaron Mate. At 3 o'clock, we found him, St. Petersburg, Russia, Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.